shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. If not us, who will be like Jesus to the least of these? If not us, tell me who will be like Jesus to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love. Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun.
Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for Saturday, July 22nd, 2017, 8th year of Chungi, 2nd, 5th month, 29th day by the heavenly calendar. It's the final day on this heavenly calendar month, and we will be beginning a new month on the heavenly calendar tomorrow. This is actually the second time I'm beginning this morning's broadcast. You may have seen an earlier broadcast that did not have a sound because we had some problem with our microphone here, but that is fixed. The light is on. And I believe you can hear me. My name is Tim Elder. I'm sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. I want to go to the weather this morning, and it's 68 degrees and partly cloudy at the Cheongguk this morning. And looks like we're going up to 87 degrees with what it's going to feel like it's 96. So, and humid. Pretty much the same as the last couple of days, but maybe a touch less hot. But I don't know if anybody is going to actually feel the difference. Tonight, mostly cloudy, and we're expecting a little bit of rain. However, you know what? Tomorrow is going to be much, much cooler, much, much cooler. It's going to get down to the high temperature tomorrow is only going to be about 79 degrees. So that should be much more pleasant. And then the next few days will be in the upper 70s for the highs, and maybe 80 degrees for the high. So we've had a few days of really above normal, uncomfortable temperatures, but looks like this is going to be the final day for that, at least for a while, as we finish out July. All right, I want to go to my Rima this morning. My Bible Rima this morning is in the book of Amos, chapter 1. Thus saith the Lord, I'm in chapter 1, I'm beginning at verse 11. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. But I will send a fire upon Teman, which shall devour the palaces of Basra. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have ripped up the women with child of Gilead, that they might enlarge their border. But I will kindle a fire in the wall of Rabbah, and it shall devour the palaces thereof, with shouting in the day of battle, with a tempest in the day of the whirlwind. And their king shall go into captivity, and he and his princes together, saith the Lord. So the Lord is giving out judgment, because he is a just God, and so crimes are being punished, and he is announcing the sentences and the punishment for various crimes being committed by people or by nations, because God is a just God. I want to go to the Cheonseonggyeong. Here I am on the first chapter of Book 13, Restoration of True God's Homeland. And the title of the chapter is The Restoration of the True God's Homeland, a homeland that the true God desires. And I'm in the very beginning of this chapter 1. Jesus came to establish, this is, let's see what the page number is here. 2004, it looks like, or 2005. 2005, I'm sorry, yes. Jesus came to establish the homeland of the true God. The prophets and the patriots of history worked to build this same homeland in order to establish. You don't like it when it does that. To build this homeland in order to establish. Let's see if we can get this thing centered on the page. In order to establish heaven, one perfect man must come. Did you get that, family fetters? In order to establish heaven, one perfect man must come. This man must be recognized. This man must be recognized by heaven and earth, begin a family, have children, and then establish a tribe, people, and a nation. He must indemnify the relationship between Cain and Abel, and graft them to himself, and build the homeland of God's dominion in this world. The prophets and patriots of history desired this result. However, they were unable to build the longed-for kingdom of heaven on earth, to which individuals, families, tribes, peoples, nations, and the world could be connected. Therefore, we must abandon the path along which humankind has been heading and go in God's direction. This is a word spoken in 1965, October 30th, and it's recorded in page 278 of volume 15 in Father's collected works. One can certainly see why the Family Fed would want to go through and edit, redact, change Father's words, because it certainly does not fit their narrative, where it is not a man that comes, but a woman that comes. But clearly, Father is saying that a man must come, and this man must be recognized by heaven and earth. He must begin a family, have children, and then establish a tribe, people, and a nation. He must indemnify the relationship between Cain and Abel, and graft them to himself, and build the homeland of God's dominion in this world. Wow, that is really a powerful statement, a mission statement that Father gave in 1965. And he really it's the consistency of Father's words is really amazing. You can read something in 1965, you can read, or whether it's 65 or 95 or 2005. Father's words are quite consistent. He doesn't one day say, "Oh, wait a second, you know what? It's not that way. It's this way." People say, "Oh, he said different things at different times, contradicting." But I think if you look at these situations when he was speaking, he was not contradicting himself, but he was adapting to different situations that presented to him. We know that God's will is accomplished by a combination of God's portion of responsibility and the human beings accomplishing our portion of responsibility. And the ratio of 95-5 has been given as kind of a guideline as to the comparison of those. Although Father said that as much as 97% was accomplished, and only 3% remaining was Han Mother's portion of responsibility. But the providence takes different directions depending on whether human beings accomplish our portion of responsibility or not. Obviously, Jesus' crucifixion was a major sort of a turning point in God's providence. That was when Jesus was born. That was not the way in which God had hoped that Jesus' time on earth would end. He was hoping, God was hoping when Jesus was born that he would establish the homeland of the true God, as it says here. Jesus came to establish the homeland of the true God. And so God's idea then was that Jesus would be the one perfect man who would come in order to do that. And Jesus, if you substitute Jesus' name into this passage, Jesus had to be recognized by heaven and earth, begin a family, have children. But in this case, Jesus was recognized by heaven, but not earth. And he was not able to begin a family. He was not able to have children. He was not able to establish a tribe, except in a spiritual way, because after his crucifixion, he was resurrected. He came back and he established a spiritual children, a spiritual family, a spiritual tribe. And that, of course, was the Christianity that he was able to begin on the basis of Peter. Then Father was able to come as the returning Messiah, the returning Jesus in 1920. And actually, maybe we should start referring to the beginning of a father's life as being in 1919, because that, after all, is when he was conceived in his mother's womb, and life begins at the time of conception. So you could say that the Messiah came in 1919, when he was conceived in his mother's womb, but born into this world in 1920. And then, so he was able to come as the perfect man who was in fact recognized by heaven and earth, but not only by heaven but also by earth. The conditions for that were established, and he was able to then have a family, was able to begin a family and have children, and then establish a tribe, a people, and a nation. Well, Cheonryuk is the nation that Father is establishing. And that nation has not yet come in actuality, but certainly the constitution for that nation has already been published, and we expect that somehow God will lead us to that. And this is the prophets and patriots of history desired this result. It was the result that the prophets and patriots in history always desired. But they were unable to build the longed-for kingdom on earth to which everyone could be connected. Therefore, Father says, we must abandon the path along which humankind has been heading and go in God's direction. So we're going a different path. We're not going the path that humankind has been going until now, but we're going in God's direction. So yeah, we're swimming upstream. We're going against the grain of this world, and I'm trying to. There's a quote of something that I read in high school coming to me, but it's not quite here. We are going against the grain, and so we are not leading normal lives, and we are meeting tremendous resistance from both inside and outside. But that is all a part of the process of building God's kingdom on this earth. Let's have hope. Let's have hope, and let's have certainty. As Mrs. Kang often says, she repeats of what Father told her, that things will be accomplished to the extent that you believe. To the extent that if you believe 100%, they will be accomplished 100%. And so let's have 100% faith and belief this day in the coming of God's kingdom, of the coming of the Cheonryuk, and that we are a part of that building process. Let's take pride in that. Let's have confidence in that. All right, so with that, we'll take a break here and come back in about a minute or so and start going through the news from a Cheonryuk perspective. See you in a minute.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 22nd, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheonryuk, Hyungjin Moon. I wanted to start this morning with an article in the World Tribune about how it is that Europe came to this situation where we've been talking about the last few days, where 86,000, nearly 100,000 migrants have come into Italy during so far this year. Last year we were talking about Greece and how people were coming into Greece from Turkey and then pushing up through the Balkans and into and trying to get into Germany and so forth, and about how some percentage of those were that most of them were, a large majority were military-aged men, and some percentage were terrorists, and so forth and so forth. Now this year we're talking about Italy. It's like Europe seems to be a case where, you stop the leak somewhere, or stop the hole, plug up the hole somewhere, and then it bursts someplace else. Italy now is the center of this migration crisis in Europe that has been going on now for years. What is happening in Italy is that people coming up from in North Africa, mostly from then going from Libya, because that's the closest point, get into boats, and of course they have there are people coming up from various parts in Africa are paying people to transport them to Europe in hopes of finding a better life there. And most of them are economic migrants, and they pay people they pay these, what do you call it, the coyotes or whatever the people transporting those are called, to put them into boats, and then they take them off. Then they take them offshore, and the intention is never to take them all the way to Italy, across the Mediterranean. The intention is to just take them out to sea, and then the idea is that they will be rescued by Italian or other EU vessels, Coast Guard, or actually many of them are rescued by non-profit organizations, which are now sort of specializing in this kind of rescue, quote, rescue, unquote, operation. Rescue because the intention is never to cross the Mediterranean in the first place. The intention is simply to go out to sea and wait to be rescued, and then taken to Europe by these rescue ships. So how did this kind of situation come about? Well, there's something there was a ruling by the European Court of Human Rights in 2012 that actually has precipitated this result. And I wanted to explain that this morning because World Tribune has a very good article on that. This is by World Tribune staff, and it says that the 2012 Hirsi, that's HIRSI, ruling by the European Court, and Hirsi is the name of the person who was involved in this ruling. The 2012 Hirsi ruling by the European Court for Human Rights was the spark that ignited the current situation in Europe, and analysts said. Quote, in a sense, Europe looks like a continent where American Democrats have been in power for 30 years, not only in the European states, but also at the level of the European Union. Drew Godefriedi, a classical liberal Belgian author and founder of the Institute, looks like this will be in English, but it might be the Hayek Institute in Brussels, wrote for Gatestone Institute on July 20th. Quote, in the U.S., the political spectrum still spans a vast range of views between Democrats and Republicans, globalists and nationalists, pro-lifers and pro-choicers, pro-government control and pro-individuals control and pro-whatever, Godefriedi wrote. Quote, even today, with a president and a Supreme Court clearly on the political right, these divisions and the all-important separation of powers allow for and encourage vigorous debate. By contrast, Europe, at the official level, such a spectrum of views no longer exists. Unquote. Those who in those who in 1886 gave the Statue of Liberty to America, referring to France here, those who in 1886 gave the Statue of Liberty to America, quote, to commemorate the perseverance of freedom and democracy in the United States, unquote, are today, quote, willingly trampling their own people's liberties through courts of appointed, unelected, unaccountable ideologues, Godefroy said. And this is exactly what the king has been saying about the EU, the European Union, that the people in Brussels who are making regulations, or not just Brussels, but in this case the European Court of Human Rights, are issuing directives and orders that affect countries that are members of the EU, but they themselves are not elected. They're unaccountable. They're just appointed. And so this is why the king is calling this basically, very similar to the Soviet Union was prior to its demise. This is it's as if Western Europe has adopted the political system of the defunct Soviet Union. The so-called Hersey ruling, named after the court case of Hersey Jamal and others versus Italy, states, now listen to this, states that this ruling by the Court of Human Rights in the European Union states that the European states, quote, have a legal obligation to rescue migrants wherever they find them in the Mediterranean Sea, even just 200 meters away from the Libyan coast, and ferry them to the European shores so that these people can claim the status of refugees, Godefroy wrote. When the Italian Navy intercepted illegal migrants in the Mediterranean Sea and sent them back to their point of origin, Libya, this was, I guess this is what precipitated this court case. When the Italian Navy intercepted illegal migrants in the Mediterranean Sea and sent them back to their point of origin, Libya, quote, not only did the ECHR condemn Italy for this obvious breach of human rights, the Italians had to pay 15,000 euros, or about $17,000, to each of these migrants, illegal migrants, in the name of, quote, moral damage, unquote, Godefroy noted. Quote, this kind of money is equivalent to more than 10 years of income in Somalia and Eritrea, the countries of origin of Mr. Hersey Jamal and his companions. In 2016, Somalia's GDP per capita was an estimated $400 USD. Eritrea's $1,300. So now you can call that a bleeding heart, but that's more than a bleeding heart. That's a exploding heart. Wow. So in this court case, apparently Mr. Jamal, Hersey Jamal, who's a man who was trying to enter Italy illegally, was stopped at sea by the Italian Navy, and the Italian Navy, not only him but other people too, were with him, and the Italian Navy took them back to Libya. And the European Court of Human Rights says, that was a mistake, that was illegal. It says that the Italian Navy had the legal, not just moral, but legal obligation to, once they had rescued these people, to bring them to Italy so that they could claim refugee status. And so that's what's happening today as a result of this court ruling, is what this author is explaining. So as a result of this court ruling now, not by Italy itself, but by the European Court of Human Rights, Italy now has received, at last that I read, 86,000, must be close to 100,000 by now, illegal migrants from North Africa, from Libya. And Italy now has 200,000 such people housed in what some people are calling warehouses, human warehouses, throughout their country. And they don't know what to do with them. And so the article that we read, the King read yesterday, discussed what's being called the nuclear option. And that's nuclear option these days is a term that's given to sort of ultimate options, where by this option, Italy would just say, okay, we'll issue temporary EU visas to all these 200,000 people so that they can go beyond Europe to wherever they want to go within the European Union. And they're doing that, they're considering this option because they say they can't get enough help from other EU countries to handle this migration. Clearly, what's happening in terms of history is a mass migration and a replacement of one population by another on the European continent. And people wonder why we in America don't want that to happen here. So after the ruling, this article continues, particularly in Africa, quote, many understood, yeah, they're not stupid, they understand. Many understood that if they could reach the Mediterranean, Europe's navies would now be obliged to ferry them directly to Europe. Yeah, that's right. They got it right. They understood. They're not stupid. They understood. Before the Hersey ruling, when people tried to reach the shores of Europe, hundreds every year tragically died at sea. After Hersey, the objective is now simply to be intercepted. Consequently, hundreds of thousands attempt this journey, often with the help of non-governmental organizations whose activists wait for boats to appear at sea, just off the Libyan coast. We therefore presently have 5,000 unintercepted people dying at sea every year. So instead of hundreds dying tragically, we now have 5,000 dying tragically. Congratulations to these NGOs and to the European Court of Human Rights. You're making many, many more people die. Today in Western Europe, politically speaking, in the press and in universities, quote, either you are on the left or you are a pariah, Godefroy wrote. Quote, if you are a pariah, you are most likely to be prosecuted for Islamophobia, racism, discrimination, or some other trumped-up charge. Unquote. In the United States, quote, especially since the advent of increased terrorism, the subject of illegal immigrants, migrant workers, and the vetting of immigrants has become hotly debated, unquote, Godefroy noted. Quote, by contrast, in Europe, the topic of illegal migrants is effectively forbidden. This is a European writing now, a European man. Yeah. The continent has recently been invaded by millions of migrants, many apparently arriving under the false pretense of being refugees, even according to the United Nations. The European people, of course, quote, of course, still share the common values of Western civilization, Godefroy wrote. The Visegrad group of countries in Central Europe, for instance, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia, do not accept the German diktat to relocate Muslim refugees. Parts of Western Europe, such as the northern Flemish-speaking part of Belgium, are also pretty tired of the whole European mess. And Angela Merkel will not embody the leadership of Germany forever. Godefroy concluded, Americans, therefore, would do well to understand that for the time being, the cultural left is so deeply entrenched in Western Europe and the EU that their worst ideological enemy is not the Middle East or Russia, it is Europe. And he's saying that America's worst ideological enemy is not the Middle East or Russia, it is Europe. Yeah. There was one photograph of the recent G20 session. I guess they took a number of photographs, but in one of those photographs, Angela Merkel, of course, was front and center because she was hosting it in Hamburg. And then next to her, on her right, as from her perspective, on her right hand, I'm sorry, from our perspective, I guess, from our perspective, on her right hand was standing the president of China, Xi Jinping. And where was President Trump? He was not even on the front row. He was in the second row. And Theresa May, as I recall, was in the third row, showing very clearly Angela Merkel's priorities. Yes, so that photograph also illustrated that America's ideological opponent, I don't want to say enemy, but ideological opponent at least is Europe, led by Angela Merkel. Not Putin, but Angela Merkel. Let me see. There was looks like I somehow lost that article. Okay, well, let's take a break now, and we'll come back with a more news from a Chonico perspective after this.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 22nd, 2017, 8th year of Chungi's second, 5th month, and 29th day. Tim Elder sitting in for the second King of Chungi Hyungjin Moon. I wanted to go this segment to an article about this tragic shooting a week ago now of a woman in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And the shooting, she was shot by a police officer. There's been some development that was on Thursday. The police chief of Minneapolis has said that this person should not have died. And then yesterday, the mayor of Minneapolis has come out and said that the police chief has resigned over this issue. In a raucous, then something happened there at the press conference. In a raucous press conference on Friday evening, as last night, Minneapolis Mayor Betsy Hodges announced the resignation of Minneapolis Police Chief Jane Hartau. The resignation came in the wake of the fatal shooting of an Australian woman by a police officer on July 15. Quote, "We need new leadership at MPD," unquote, Hodges said. "I asked Chief Hartau for her resignation. She tendered it, and I accepted it." The presser quickly turned into a back-and-forth debate with a protester who was in attendance. "We do not want you as the mayor," a man said to Hodges. "We do not want you as the mayor of Minneapolis. You have been ineffective. We do not want you as the mayor, Betsy Hodges," unquote. Hodges initially attempted to engage the protester, saying she would be, quote, "happy to sit down and talk with people about the future of policing in Minneapolis," unquote, but the protester continued to yell while others in attendance joined the dialogue. Hodges eventually walked away and left the room without continuing her announcement as the protesters began cheering before taking turns to make their own remarks. The mayor returned to the podium approximately 30 minutes later, once the room had cleared, to complete her comments and to address the concerns brought up by the protesters. Chief Hartau's resignation came a day after she made her initial remarks on the death of 40-year-old Justine Damond. Damond was fatally shot on Saturday by an officer who responded to her 911 call about a possible sexual assault in the alley behind her house. Damond apparently approached the driver's side window of the police vehicle right after the two responding officers heard a loud sound. The officer in the passenger seat, Mohammed Noor, then fired his weapon through the open driver's side window, according to the Minneapolis Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Hartau had been out of the city in the days after the incident, but said on Thursday that she had been on personal time and was in contact with her command staff. On Thursday, Hartau said that Damond did not have to die, adding that the actions of Officer Noor go against who we are in the department and against how officers are trained. Noor has still not agreed to be interviewed about the incident. Before she was interrupted, Hodges announced that she would nominate Assistant Chief, etc. Okay, so this is a very tragic incident where it looks very much as though an innocent person, a woman who trusted the police to deal with the situation, was actually killed. So what it sounds like so far is that this woman heard. I guess so. Apparently, she heard some sexual intercourse going on in the alley or somewhere near her house or near the house where she was. There was sexual intercourse going on, and a woman was making noise during this sexual intercourse, and it sounded to her as if the woman was being raped. In other words, that the woman was not consenting to the intercourse, and so she called the police, saying, "Hey, you know what? I think someone's being something to this extent that sounds like someone is being raped near my house." The police came, and she went out to speak to the police, and one of the police officers took out his gun and shot her. The person who was not the person involved in the rape. In fact, we don't know at all about this rape situation. We don't know what was involved there. All we know is that the person who reported the rape was shot point blank by the police. And the police are now saying that, well, there was a loud noise, and one other place said there was speculation that there might have been fireworks or something like that going off, and the police were startled by the fireworks, and so shot this woman who was trying to talk to them. So anyway, it's obviously a very tragic situation, and we could say, we could probably have to question the kind of training that this officer had received, education and training, where he heard, if we accept what the police are saying, or what, and these are unofficial sources so far, has not been confirmed, but if we accept all that for the time being, and say that a police officer heard some fireworks, and then pulled his gun and shot an innocent person who was standing beside his car trying to talk to him, or him and his partner. And the officer that shot the woman was on the driver's side, looking in, sort of trying to talk to the police officer who was driving the vehicle, driving the patrol car, but the police officer that shot her was on the passenger side. So he pulled his gun, and the bullet went past his partner and into the body of the woman. So the more we hear about it, the more it sounds like there was some really poor training going on here. That sounds very much like the police officer was not properly trained. So let's look at this from a Chunuguk perspective, where we have police and a police military, where the police are not in the Chunuguk. The police are not paid by the state, paid by the government, but we police ourselves. Now, in that situation, would the woman, instead of calling police, would she have dealt with this apparent rape herself? Would she have taken her weapon out? That would have been her call. She may or may not have done that. But maybe there was someone in the neighborhood, other people in the neighborhood that would be proficient, who had received training with guns. In this kind of situation, perhaps it would have maybe she would have called that person, and that person would have responded, and maybe could have been dealt on that level. Anyway, she would probably have called someone that she knew, and someone who was going to be familiar with this woman, with Justine Damon, and would have been much less likely to shoot her, even at the sound of fireworks or even of gunfire. So I think if we're going to have a police and police military in the Chunuguk, the people who are going to be responding to situations like this are going to have to be trained, well trained, even if they are not paid by the state, even if they are sort of not professional in the sense of not being paid. They still need to have a very high level of professional capabilities, professional abilities, especially in terms of shoot and non-shoot training. When do you shoot, and when do you use the weapon, and when do you not use the weapon? When you hear fireworks going off, do you just randomly start shooting everybody in who's around you? Obviously not. My impression is that this particular police officer was poorly trained. Maybe didn't belong on the police force in the first place. Certainly, in Chandragupta, we hope to have a much better trained police force than this, even if they are not being paid. But I think the fact that people can respond to this kind of a situation within the local community, within the immediate, on that block, for example, or someone or the person responding to the situation would be personally familiar with Justine Damond, would make it less likely that this kind of a situation would occur. I looked up a little bit about the number of people who are killed by police each year, and I came up with two sources, but about 1,000 or so people are killed by police. But of course, that includes criminals, so that's not really not an indication of how many innocent people are killed. But innocent people are killed by the police in America every year. I cannot give a number, but looks like maybe in the hundreds of people are killed by police. So that's another reason, I think, for adopting something like the Chandragupta Constitution, where sovereignty is at the local level, and people can deal with these kinds of situations locally, and I would say probably much more safely. All right, that's enough for that story today. Very tragic, and my heart really goes out for the family of Justine Damond, and I'm waiting to see how this officer is going to be handled by the justice system. Seems pretty much like a situation where he needs to take responsibility. But anyway, we'll have to see how that unfolds. I imagine he'll be charged, but there hasn't been any discussion or report of him being charged of anything. I guess the investigation will come to some kind of a conclusion, and I expect he'll be charged with something. All right, let's take a break, and I'll be back in a minute or so with more news from a Chandragupta perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 22nd, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Chandragupta, Hyungjin Moon. During the break, we just finished talking about this tragic situation in Minneapolis where an innocent woman was shot, killed by police in what appears so far to be an entirely unjustifiable incident of a murder by a police officer. And I was just thinking of recent comments on a Japanese blog about the photographs taken here of people wearing crowns and carrying guns, and this blogger is saying that looks like something like the Jonestown or the Branch Davidians is happening in northeast Pennsylvania. This is a blog written in Japan, referring to our congregation here in Newfoundland. Japan is a very interesting case where personal safety and security has been almost entirely outsourced. Of course, Japan itself is a country that has outsourced its national security to the United States, pretty much. Yes, I know their peace constitution was written by the American occupation forces that occupied Japan and deprived Japan of its sovereignty between 1945 and 1952. Okay, but sometime after that, Japan was free to amend or abolish or change that constitution, and they have chosen not to, so they can't blame the liberal American left people under MacArthur who wrote that constitution for what they have today. They had plenty of opportunities to change it if they wanted to, if as a country they wanted to do that. But effectively, they have outsourced their national security to the United States, and in terms of their personal safety as well. People in Japan say, "Oh, look, we're so safe. We have so little gun violence, et cetera, et cetera." Yeah, because they have outsourced their personal safety to the police, and Japan is a country where police have incredible power, and so people say, "Oh, well, yeah, we're safe." Well, because you've given up your personal safety, you've given up the responsibility of protecting yourself, put yourself at the mercy of the state. And that's not a democracy. I don't see how that can be called a democracy, where the people are not the owners. You cannot say that the sovereignty of the nation lies in the people, in the citizens, when the citizens have no ability to protect themselves. They have no ability to protect themselves. A good case in point: 4,000 Unification Church members were kidnapped and subjected to a forced conversion over the decades in Japan, and the police did nothing about it. In fact, the police actually assisted the kidnappers in instances where the person kidnapped was able to escape and run to the nearest police station. The police returned that person to the kidnappers. Now, here in Pennsylvania, if the law says that if someone tries to kidnap me, I'm allowed to use deadly force to prevent that kidnapping. Or if I witness a case where someone is being kidnapped, I'm allowed to use deadly force to protect the person being kidnapped. So if by outsourcing, by conceding by giving up the right to protect themselves, we had 4,000 Japanese Unification Church members helpless in the face of this kind of ongoing kidnapping scheme. It was a criminal business enterprise that could continue because our members, our people, our brothers and sisters were denied the right to defend themselves. 4,000. Wow. Those ministers and lawyers who conducted that criminal enterprise will certainly not be able to do that here in northeast Pennsylvania. Fortunately, here we are allowed to defend ourselves, and we are allowed to defend others, and we are allowed to carry the tools with which to do that. Anyway, those are the thoughts that came to me about that. I wanted to go to this situation on the USS Fitzgerald collision. Of course, this is an incident that occurred off the coast of Japan. When did this happen now? Some time ago, not too long ago. And where a cargo ship, a large cargo ship, a container ship, hit the USS Fitzgerald, a Navy vessel, basically broadsided it on the starboard side. That is, as you're looking from the stern to the bow. That is from the back to the front, the right-hand side, the starboard. And people have been asking, how could this occur? You know, American Navy vessels have all sorts of radars and everything that they're able to defend themselves against enemy ship. And here, it happened at 1:30 or something like that, very early in the morning. They get broadsided not by an enemy ship, but by a cargo ship. Well, guess who's getting blamed? The guys at the bottom. I mean, of the command pyramid. This is something I would expect by certain, if it had involved the Navy of a, or organization in certain East Asian countries that shall go unnamed. But in the U.S. Navy, they're going to do this. They're going to blame the guys at the bottom of the pyramid. Come on. But anyway, here's the Fox News report on this. Crew members aboard the USS Fitzgerald, quote, should have spoken up, unquote, long before the American warship collided with a massive cargo vessel off the coast of Japan last month, U.S. officials said on Friday. Quote, there were many people who should have spoken up, unquote, one U.S. official who was not authorized to speak publicly about an ongoing investigation told Fox News. The rules of the road at sea mandate states that any ship should keep out of the way of any ship on her right or starboard side. So you had the Navy vessel going this way and the cargo vessel going this way. So the cargo vessel was on the right-hand side or the starboard side of the U.S. Navy ship. So the rules of the sea say that it was the U.S. Navy ship's responsibility to maybe slow down or stop or let the cargo ship pass. That's the sort of the universal rule in waterways. USS Fitzgerald was struck on her starboard side, so she didn't, and so what happened was then that the cargo ship struck the USS Fitzgerald. USS Fitzgerald was struck on her starboard side on June 17th by a cargo ship 3 times larger than the American warship. 7 American sailors were killed in the incident, but the investigation into collision still has a long way to go, Navy officials said Thursday. We are in the early stages of the investigation process to develop a comprehensive picture of what caused the collision and do not have any definitive information to release at this time, Rear Admiral Don Cutler, U.S. Navy Chief of Information, said in a statement. It is premature to speculate on causation or any other issues. Once we have detailed understanding of the facts and circumstances, we will share those findings with the Fitzgerald families, our Congressional Oversight Committee, and the general public, unquote. One U.S. official pointed to the U.S. Coast Guard's Navigation Rules and Regulations Handbook, which clearly states this rule: when 2 power-driven vessels are crossing so as to involve risk of collision, the vessel which has the other on her own starboard side shall keep out of the way and shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, avoid crossing ahead of the other vessel. So let the other guy go first, is what they're saying. There are 2 investigation teams aboard. There are 2 navigation teams aboard every Navy warship. One on the bridge, where the ship is driven, and another team below the bridge in the Combat Information Center, where a backup chart and radar team are located. This means there were 2 teams of sailors that missed recommending and taking decisive and early action, the official told Fox News. Yeah, it happened early in the morning, 1:30. I mean, obviously, somebody was asleep. Maybe some buddies were asleep. Maybe they were playing poker. I don't know. But I think the blame, though, has to climb the command structure. Come on, don't blame the guys at the bottom. Yeah, we know that. But discipline, obviously there was a situation here with discipline and training, and that I think is where the investigation should look into. How was it that you could have two teams, and neither, if that's the case, and neither team says, hey, you know what, we need to slow down or we need to take evasive action. We've got a big cargo ship 3 times our size closing in on us. I guess probably each team figured, oh, well, the other team will take care of this or something like that. Training and discipline sounds to me like there was an absence of that. And I just have to wonder how widespread that is within the U.S. Navy right now. It's all well and good to, it's all not well and good to be opening up the military to transgender and homosexuals and everything else. But if you're going to have, if you're not going to be able to protect your ship, then something is very, very, very wrong. And it seems to me that maybe less emphasis should be placed on that kind of opening up the military to various sexual orientations, and more emphasis needs to be placed on training and discipline. This is a ship that was supposed to be involved in the North Korea situation. It was part of, I think, one of the ships that were part of the strike forces that were gathering around the North Korea and the Korean Peninsula. So we're going to have to go to war pretty soon, very likely. And with crews like this, I don't care how weak North Korea is, with crews like this, we're going to be in trouble there. And many, this time seven sailors died, but if we don't have a better training and discipline in our military, many more people are going to die needlessly. I think this is a service-wide, maybe a military-wide situation. It's a tip of an iceberg that needs to be investigated completely and fully. So I intend to continue to follow this situation. It's not just one ship going bump in the night. It's a military-wide situation that needs to be dealt with, I believe. So anyway, we'll continue to follow that situation. Let's take another break. We're at our first hour now, so we'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back with more news from the Choni perspective.
And our sons, and just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these. won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 22nd, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Chanuguk, Hyungjin Moon. This segment, I want to go to a story about John McCain. John McCain, of course, has been diagnosed with a particularly aggressive form of brain cancer, and he has received some surgery, and I believe he is still resting at home, and he is expected to be out of the Senate for at least a week, perhaps more. He says that he's coming back. But I want to go to an article in USA Today that talks about the effect of John McCain's absence on the overall Senate. This USA Today says, this is actually by a reporter of the Arizona Republic, which is John McCain's home state. Arizona Senator John McCain's absence from Capitol Hill as he battles a deadly form of brain cancer means more than just one less Republican vote for the already narrow Senate GOP majority. Few senators have the stature of McCain, a six-term veteran, 2008 Republican presidential nominee, and former prisoner of war. As chairman of the influential Senate Armed Services Committee, which has oversight of the Pentagon, he is a prominent voice on national defense and security matters, and outspoken enough to act as a check on President Trump when necessary. A regular face on the Sunday morning public affairs TV shows, McCain also has a history of working across the aisle with Democrats on select issues such as comprehensive immigration reform. McCain signaled prior to his cranial surgery last week to remove a blood clot, revealed Wednesday to be associated with an aggressive brain tumor known as, I won't try to pronounce that he might be interested in pursuing another such bipartisan coalition. This time to fix the healthcare system in the event a GOP-only effort to undo the Affordable Care Act fell apart, which appears to have happened earlier this week. McCain is held in such regard by his Republican colleagues that in 2014 he was tapped as the GOP negotiator on Department of Veteran Affairs reform, even though he didn't sit on the Senate's VA committee. As long as he's gone, the Senate has a lot less gravitas, said John Jack Pitney Jr., a political scientist at Claremont McKenna College in Southern California. Because of his record and his character, his words carry a lot of weight. He was a heavyweight in the chamber full of lightweights. McCain, who turns 81 on August 29, on Thursday made it clear that he is by no means done with the Senate. While he has told fellow senators that chemotherapy likely is in his future, he also puts his sparring partners in Congress on notice via Twitter that I'll be back soon, so stand by. McCain was expected to miss at least a week of Senate business because of his surgery, but treatment for the cancer will certainly require him to take more time off. In the meantime, Senator Jim Inhofe, Republican of Oklahoma, has been filling in for McCain at the helm of the Armed Services Committee. He is the Republican next in seniority on the panel. No hearings are scheduled for next week. It's quieter without McCain, said Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican of South Carolina, a close friend and ally of McCain's. It's hugely different because John is a fighter and he jumps into every cause no matter how hard it may be, Graham told reporters. The energy he provides, he's coming back. Senator Jeff Flake, Republican of Arizona, said McCain's absence will reverberate internationally as well as in Washington. Quote, one of the most important roles he has played, obviously, over the past 6 months is as one who reassured the world that America is still going to lead, unquote, Flake told the Arizona Republic. He was a calming, consistent voice when we needed it. Flake and others said the loss of McCain in the short term is most dramatic in the health care debate, where every Republican vote in the Senate counts. The GOP controls the 100-member chamber with a 52-member majority. Senate Republican leaders apparently still plan to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act, next week, even though McCain isn't expected back so soon. On votes to confirm Trump's nominees, Republicans usually have a vote or two to spare. Flake said it also helps that Republicans control the Senate's schedule and might be able to time certain votes for when McCain is present on the Hill. It will make a difference in the arena when we're debating these things, Flake said. He's always contributing. McCain's absence also represents a big loss of institutional memory. He first won election to the House of Representatives in 1982 and moved to the Senate after winning the seat vacated by Barry Goldwater in 1986. That loss could have an impact on other big items still pending on the GOP agenda, such as tax reform. Not sure that they'll actually be able to get to it, but McCain was one of only 13 senators who was actually on Capitol Hill the last time Congress passed comprehensive tax reform, Pitney said. At least he had some idea of how difficult it is to take the other extreme. U.S. House Speaker Paul Ryan was in high school. He will also leave a void when it comes to bipartisan cooperation in the highly polarized Senate. They're desperately short of grown-ups, Pitney said. Over the years, McCain often has spearheaded efforts to bridge the divide between members of the two parties, such as when he teamed up with then-Senator Russ Feingold, Democrat of Wisconsin, on campaign finance reform. So this article is obviously written by a fan of McCain's from the local newspaper, and someone who has relied on McCain over the years to give him various stories, and so wants to really praise him and build him up, so that hopefully when he comes back, he'll give him even more stories. McCain, of course, when he ran in 2008 for president, I did not vote for him. Yeah, I voted for Obama back in 2008, but I still wonder, would it have been any worse under McCain? I'm not so sure it would have been. McCain is a globalist. Of course, Obama is a socialist, and someone who Obama, of course. Anyway, let's not get into that. But McCain, this reporter, obviously very much of a fan of McCain, considers him to be a heavyweight in the midst of lightweights in the Senate and so forth, so forth. But McCain is very much of a globalist and did not have a really America's interest in mind in many cases. And of course, head of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and so he used that as a pretext to go abroad and talk with international leaders, carry out his own sort of foreign policy, which, especially in the last 6 months, has been, in many cases, undermining the president's own foreign policy. He's been going to Syria and places like this. This reporter says that McCain has been assuring the world that America is still leading. But what he's been doing, though, is saying that I'm still leading, that still the globalists, don't worry, the globalists are still in charge. So you just have to endure this Trump thing for maybe a few months or a few more years, and we'll be back in charge, so don't worry, is basically what he's been trying to say. And I don't want to, a guy's sick and maybe terminally so you always want to feel sorry for the person. I'm sure, him and his family, this is a big and sad thing. But you got to wonder, that especially we had an article a few days ago about the lady who is likely going to replace him if McCain resigns. What was her name? Kelly Ward, was it? Yeah, Kelly Ward was her name, who will probably be a better choice for Arizona and for America if McCain resigns or leaves the Senate and the governor of Arizona has to choose another Republican to replace him. And probably Kelly Ward, I think, based on the little that I know about her, looks like she would be a good replacement for him. Right now, America needs President Trump to be able to pursue his agenda and pursue his goals. And he has enough trouble fighting the Democrats and the media and the globalists And I think he's been for someone like McCain, who has not been supporting the president. If he leaves the Senate, that would be an overall net positive for the country. Anyway, that's my opinion, and I will see how this plays out, and I'm sure it will continue to play out. A story on North Korea. If you were planning on spending your honeymoon in Pyongyang, it looks like you're going to have to change your plans. U.S. to ban travel to North Korea. Embassy urges Americans to exit immediately. The Trump administration is advising all U.S. nationals in North Korea to leave immediately, as the State Department said it will soon issue a ban on American tourism to the communist nation. Koryo Tours and Young Pioneer Tours, who both operate in North Korea, said on July 21 that they had been told of the upcoming ban by the Swedish embassy, which acts for the U.S. as Washington has no diplomatic relations with Pyongyang. I'm reading this, by the way, in the worldtribune.com. State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert said in a statement that the ban would be published next week in the Federal Register and will go into effect 30 days later. Due to mounting concerns over the serious risk of arrest and long-term detention under North Korea's system of law enforcement, the Secretary has authorized a geographical travel restriction on all U.S. nationals' use of a passport to travel through or to North Korea, Nauert said. Okay, that might be one reason. Another reason might be that, hey, you know what, we're getting ready to bomb the heck out of them, so please stay away. That might be another reason. Some observers have suggested the U.S. is using the date the ban is set to be announced, July 27th, to cloud North Korea's Victory Day on the same day, the BBC reported. I don't know, it sounds like a stretch to me. In May, 2 congressmen introduced the North Korea Travel Control Bill to cut off the foreign currency the Kim Jong-un regime earns from American tourists. Once in effect, U.S. passports will be invalid for travel to, through, and in North Korea, and individuals will be required to obtain a passport with a special validation in order to travel to or within North Korea, Nauert said. U.S. officials linked the move to the death of American college student Otto Warmbier, who died after returning from North Korea, where he had been imprisoned since January 2016. Rowan Beard, a Young Pioneer Tours, told the BBC the embassy was urging all U.S. nationals to depart immediately, adding that the embassy was trying to check on the number of U.S. tourists left in the country. The State Department does not keep a record of the number of American tourists who visit North Korea, but tour operators suggest it is around 1,000 per year. There are reported to be 3 U.S. citizens currently in custody in North Korea. They are Kim Dong-chol, a 62-year-old naturalized U.S. citizen born in South Korea, who was sentenced to 10 years of hard labor in April 16 for spying. And then there's a Korean-American professor, Kim Sang-duk, or Tony Kim, who was detained April 2017. The reasons for his arrest are not yet clear. And then there's Kim Hak-song, like Kim Sang-duk, worked in the Pyongyang University of Science and Technology and was detained in May 2017 on suspicion of hostile acts against the state. Really wasn't planning on going to North Korea anyway, but it's not very common that the United States tells its citizens you cannot go to certain countries. I remember when I was a child, I was seeing in my passport that there was a list of a few countries that the passport said I was not allowed to go to. But now we have this situation being conducted in North Korea. And like I said, this these statements by the State Department, they rarely mean or rarely are actually issued for the reasons that are stated. So you just have to wonder if the United States is really gearing up for some kind of a military action against North Korea, and perhaps this is the reason that this travel ban is being issued. There was the analyst in Japan who was saying that it took U.S. about 6 months to gear up for war against Iraq, and so that if you figure that if the U.S. has started gearing up for war against North Korea, say in early February at the beginning of the Trump administration, and perhaps there will be a war. The United States will go to war against North Korea in the autumn. That's what one analyst in Japan was saying. Not impossible. Not impossible. Not impossible. Trump told Xi Jinping in April, either you take care of it or we will. And obviously, China is not doing that, and so perhaps that's what we're getting ready for now. Let's look at some of the other headlines on Drudge. All spiced out. There's a change in the Sean Spicer has resigned as a White House spokesman, and he's being replaced by his assistant, I guess, by Huckabee. What was her name? Anyway, her last name is Huckabee. And so, I don't know how much Americans really care about that kind of thing, but we'll have to see what that happens, how that happens. And then paper, how Jane Sanders College vision collapsed under debt. This is the situation in Vermont. Was it New Hampshire? I'm sorry, New Hampshire, where the wife of Bernie Sanders, his name is Jane Sanders, is under investigation by the FBI for some dealings with her involving her association with a college there, and the college itself is Burlington College, is now defunct, I guess, and but she borrowed some money, and there's some question over how she was able to borrow that money. Let's look at this. Let's look at this article. Jane O'Mara Sanders had an ambitious vision for Burlington College. Sanders, a wife of 2016 presidential candidate and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, described herself when she was hired in 2004 as a turnaround president. She orchestrated the college's move from a small, cramped campus to an expansive lakefront property in 2010. The sprawling green would give students a space to relax. The small private college could have built dorms, townhouses, and single homes on the 32-acre property. Some property could have been leased, perhaps to a restaurant or cafe. There could have been space for weddings, outdoor movies, or afternoon tea with a chamber music accompaniment, all with stunning views of Lake Champlain and the Adirondacks. Sounds nice. 5 years after Jane Sanders left, after significant board turnover and 3 college presidents, Burlington College and her vision collapsed under the crushing weight of debt. The Burlington College story unfolded over more than a decade of growth and struggle. In 2004, Jane Sanders is hired as president and announces a goal to improve the school's financial health. The Presidential Search Committee had said it wanted a candidate with proven fundraising experience. In December 2010, under Sanders' leadership, Burlington College purchases a new lakefront campus for $10 million. In October 2011, 10 months after the property purchase, Sanders resigns, citing different visions for the future with the Board of Trustees. And in June 2014, the college's accreditation is in jeopardy due to financial troubles. In January 2016, a Republican attorney accuses Jane O'Mara Sanders of bank fraud related to the property purchase. He later says Senator Bernie Sanders improperly pressured People's United Bank to approve the loan. May 2016, Burlington College shuts down under the burden of debt from the property deal. Little remains today of the now defunct college. Federal authorities, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the U.S. Attorney's Office, are investigating the 2010 property deal that Sanders orchestrated. A local Republican attorney has accused Sanders of bank fraud. About 150 boxes of orphaned Burlington College records were taken by the State Agency of Education. Minutes of Board of Trustees meetings, facility information, student transcripts, enrollment inquiries, and SAT scores. Agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation looked through the records and took everything they needed for their inquiry, according to emails obtained through a public records request. On March 30, the state shredded everything that remained except for student academic records. Sanders, who denies wrongdoing, has said she left Burlington College in a hopeful financial condition. There were no problems when I left. It was great. It was poised for soaring, Sanders said in a 2015 interview with the Burlington Free Press during her husband's presidential campaign. I have no doubt that had we worked out a good transition plan, or had I stayed, that it would have been wonderful. So it's their fault for firing me, basically, she's saying. The final piece of the Burlington College property was sold in a foreclosure auction last week, and the former campus is slated to become a housing development and park. The large red Burlington College roadside sign was recently taken down. One poster in the window of a former campus building attests to the college's non-traditional spirit. It reads, "Taking the road less traveled." You know, sometimes the road less traveled is less traveled for a reason. You know, you have to be careful about those roads less traveled. They're more exciting, that's for sure. Sanders was hired to lead Burlington College in 2004. She had previously served a one-year stint as interim president of Goddard College in Plainfield, Vermont, and was running her own political and higher education consulting firm. Sanders has described her style as president as entrepreneurial, and when she left in 2011, said the board of trustees had a different approach. Adam Dancier, who was chairman of the board of trustees at the time, declined to comment. Jeff Weaver, a spokesman for the Sanders family, provided a memo dated October 2011 that Sanders wrote to the Burlington College Board of Trustees to recount the accomplishments of her 7-year tenure. In recent years, we have achieved the highest rating for financial responsibility that the U.S. Department of Education provides, Sanders wrote, later adding that her administration had managed finances through smart money management rather than budget cuts. Sanders declined to comment further Thursday on the plans that she said were discarded after she left. I felt to the detriment of the school that the development plan wasn't implemented, the plan for the college. Sanders said in the 2015 interview, "Everything that we said, we'll do this, nothing happened." For Burlington College, it was a golden opportunity. Students complained about the lack of an outdoor college campus and gathering spaces at the old two-acre property. Wow, 2 acres is not very much for a college, isn't it? Burlington College commissioned architectural drawings for a new building, but then learned that the Roman Catholic Diocese of Burlington would sell the 32-acre lakefront property just down the road at a comparable expense. We decided to change our plans, wrote Sanders and Christine Plunkett, the chief financial officer at the time, when they applied for tax-exempt bond financing for the purchase from the Vermont Educational and Health Buildings Finance Agency in 2010. The purchase price was $10 million, about half the property's assessed value. It was a bold step for the tiny college with an endowment of $100,784. Yeah, bold, yeah. Annual revenue of approximately $3.6 million and 192 students. Yeah, bold is one word for it. Yeah, it sounds like an overreach. The new property purchase would be financed with a $3.65 million mortgage from the Roman Catholic Diocese of Burlington and $6.7 million tax-exempt bonds, which would be purchased by People's United Bank. The college would pay back its new debt through a major capital campaign and by more than doubling student enrollment to 400 students over 4 years. My goodness. That's more than $10 million in debt, about $10.3 million here in debt to purchase this. And so they were going to a major capital campaign, in other words, fundraising, and by more than doubling student enrollment to 400 students over 4 years. Even with 400 students, wow. The projections for enrollment are very conservative, the college leaders wrote, right. Apparently not. At the heart of the property deal was a list of donations, including $2.6 million in confirmed money and another $2.5 million in unconfirmed pledges. The list included $2 million that never materialized. At this time, we have firm commitment of $1 million from one donor and a verbal commitment for an additional $1 million from another donor, Sanders and Plunkett wrote in the financing application. In a report this year, VTDigger.org identified the confirmed $1 million donor listed on college documents as CBM, as a Corinne Bova Mayetta. In the 2010 financing application, Sanders and Plunkett said Mayetta pledged to give $1 million over the next 7 years. Mayetta said in an interview with VTDigger.org, however, that it was a bequest upon her death and not a donation. Mayetta said she gave less than $100,000 in donations. You can't borrow money on the future, Mayetta said. According to the report, that doesn't exist. The college's financial audit on June 30, 2011 appears to confirm that the pledge was an estate gift. The second $1 million verbal commitment listed in the bond application under the initials TP was a matching donation from Tony Pomerleau. His gift was contingent on the college receiving $1 million from another donor. I said, when you get that $1 million, I'll match it. Pomerleau, the 99-year-old Burlington real estate magnate and philanthropist, said in a phone interview this week. The Pomerleau promise was a handshake deal with Sanders. Pomerleau said he never signed a written commitment. The first $1 million never materialized, Pomerleau supposed, because neither Sanders nor anyone else from the college approached him to complete the matching donation. Reached Thursday, Sanders confirmed that she had listed Pomerleau as TP for $1 million on the college's list of potential donors. Sanders declined to comment on the CBM donation. Michael Luck, a financial consultant for Burlington College at the time, did not return her two phone messages seeking an interview, nor did Plunkett, the chief financial officer at the time, who later served as president of the college. The financing agency VEH-BFA reviewed the Burlington College proposal in 2010 and held a public hearing in Winooski, a nearby city, about the financing plan. No members of the public offered any comment. Charlie Dickerson, one of the board members for the VEH-BFA, opposed the deal out of concern about the college's ability to repay the debt, according to minutes of the meeting. Another member, Thomas Pelham, opposed it because he was concerned about that the property deal was a fire sale. The majority of the financing agency board voted to issue $6.7 million in bonds and to certify that the college appears that it will have sufficient revenue to repay the bonds and the interest thereon when due. Governor Jim Douglas, a Republican, signed off on the board's recommendation. Pomerleau agreed to provide a $500,000 bridge loan to help Burlington College purchase the new property. Pomerleau said in an interview that he'd loaned the money to People's United Bank at the bank's request. Matt Mahoney, the underwriter of the Burlington College loan at People's United Bank, now works at a different bank and declined to comment. A spokeswoman for People's United Bank also declined to comment. A lot of people declined to comment here. Jack Bergeron, a Burlington consultant, also declined to comment, other than to say that no federal investigators had contacted him. Sanders and college leaders planned a 5-year, $6 million capital campaign, in other words, fundraising campaign, to support the property deal, and considered fundraising to be going so well that they might set a more ambitious target. With more than one-third of this total currently pledged, the total goal may be increased prior to announcing the public phase of the campaign, Sanders and Plunkett wrote in the application. The property deal was finalized on December 31, 2010. The college struggled financially after Sanders parted ways with the institution in October 2011. In her goodbye memo to the Board of Trustees, Sanders wrote that the college had realized gift and grant commitments of nearly $1.7 million over the last year, and another $1.25 million was on the books for the future. Many of the donors, like Pomerleau, had personal relationships with Sanders. For all these donors, the handling of this transition is crucial, Sanders wrote. So this is an article that continues a little more about this whole thing. So it's clear that this is a nonprofit organization that was course, colleges are nonprofit, but they receive a student tuition and other income, but they also rely a great deal on fundraising and on endowments. And in this case, the endowment for the college was only $100,000. That's not very much. That's not a very large endowment at all. And they were going into a $10 million property deal. Bernie Sanders is a socialist. What is a socialist doing in this kind of a capitalist enterprise? Anyway, Well, and of course, he's also a very rich socialist at that, as I understand. So this financial sort of swinging and dealing didn't really work out. And now this woman, Sanders' wife, is blaming. She says, well, if you hadn't fired me, basically, if you hadn't forced me to leave, then everything would have worked out all right. I was in charge, and all these people that were going to donate money, they all had relationships with me. And when I left, they didn't. They decided not to donate, and hey, that's not my fault, is it, or something like that. But also in the financial application, some facts appears that they were misstated. An estate donation was represented as if it was something that was going to come in a very short time. And the matching donation didn't get matched, and so I didn't materialize. So it seems like this woman also has been doing some wheeling and dealing with this college's finances. But the end result, the bottom line though, is that the college no longer exists. It went bankrupt, and it has foreclosed. It was foreclosed on, and now the students that used to study there are having to find a college someplace else. College on a 2-acre campus. I'm not sure who would have gone there in the first place. But anyway, Bernie Sanders' wife, apparently not a socialist, from what I read in that article. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back with more news from a Choniku perspective in just a minute.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 22nd, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. It's always interesting to see the president's tweets in the morning, and he put out a tweet just 8 minutes ago. It says, a new intelligence leak from the Amazon Washington Post, this time against Attorney General Jeff Sessions. These illegal leaks, like Comey's, must stop. It's really great to have the president communicating directly with the American people through his Twitter account. I want to go to the Breitbart article that talks about what the president is referring to. Of course, the president calls it the Amazon Washington Post because the Washington Post is now owned by Jeff Bezos, who created and also owns the Amazon The Breitbart article on the Post article says that the deep state renewed its campaign against top Trump administration officials late Friday when it leaked to the Washington Post details of intelligence intercepts in which Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak reportedly told his superiors that he discussed campaign-related matters with Jeff Sessions before he became Attorney General. The Post reported that accounts of Kislyak's two conversations with Sessions in 2016, when Sessions was a campaign advisor to Trump, were intercepted by U.S. spy agencies. They were not seen by the Post, but in a typical deep state move, were described to the paper by officials. The story has extremely scarce details on what exactly was discussed, for how long, and in what level of detail. One official told the Post that the intel indicated that Sessions and Kislyak had substantive discussions on campaign-related matters, including Trump's positions on Russian issues, as well as prospects for U.S.-Russian relations in a Trump administration. Sessions recused himself from any Russian investigation in March after it was revealed he had two conversations with Kislyak in 2016, one in April and one in July, encounters he did not disclose at his Senate confirmation hearing. If the accounts are accurate, they would appear to contradict a statement Sessions made in March in which he said, "I never had meetings with Russian operatives or Russian intermediaries about the Trump campaign." He also said he only met with Kislyak in his capacity as a U.S. Senator. Officials who spoke to the Post say they believe that what is on the intelligence intercepts contradicts what Sessions said publicly. The Justice Department said it was unable to comment on the story due to the lack of detail and the sketchy sourcing. Obviously, I cannot comment on the reliability of what anonymous sources describe in a wholly uncorroborated intelligence intercept that the Washington Post has not seen and that has not been provided to me, Sarah Isgur Flores, a Justice Department spokesman, told the Post in a statement, and said that Sessions did not discuss interference in the election. The revelation seemed timed to do the most damage to the conservative pro-border security Attorney General, who has long been heralded as nationalists' favorite Trump cabinet appointment. Sessions has had enormous success in 6 short months in prison reform, getting tough on drug traffickers and violent offenders, and enforcing America's border controls. Sessions has been a hardliner on immigration for years. In 2015, he sent around an immigration handbook to the new Republican members of Congress in which he called immigration reform a legislative honorific almost exclusively reserved for proposals which benefit everyone but actual American citizens. But Trump has apparently soured on his once closest ally, particularly over Sessions' decision to recuse himself from any Russian investigation. Jeff Sessions takes the job, gets into the job, and recuses himself, which frankly I think is very unfair to the president, he told the New York Times in an interview Wednesday. How do you take a job and then recuse yourself? If he would have recused himself before the job, I would have said, "Thanks, Jeff, but I'm not going to take you." It's extremely unfair, and that's the mild word to the president. However, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said Thursday that while Trump was disappointed in Sessions' decision to recuse himself, clearly he has confidence in him, or he would not be the Attorney General. Sessions, meanwhile, said at a Thursday press conference, "I plan to continue to serve as long as that is appropriate." The Post notes that Sessions' role in removing FBI Director James Comey has angered many at the Bureau. So the Washington Post claims to have not seen, but have been contacted by someone in the administration, I guess someone in an intelligence agency, and that person did not show them this intercept of the Russian ambassador reporting back to Moscow, did not show them that document, but described it to them, trying to skirt the law there, I guess. But as the president has referred to this in his morning tweet, saying that this leak from the Amazon Washington Post, this time against AG Jeff Sessions. Obviously, the leak is not coming from the Washington Post. It's coming from within his organization, within his administration. And I guess the president is frustrated at his inability to identify and deal with the people who are doing this within his administration. And just as we are speaking, here he comes with another tweet. The failing New York Times foiled U.S. attempt to kill the single most wanted terrorist, al-Baghdadi, their sick agenda over national security. And that refers, of course, to another article where it said that the ISIS have been broken, but their leader got away due to a leak. And so the president is putting the blame on that, for that on the New York Times. So that tweet coming from the president just 2 minutes ago. I want to talk about the meeting that President Trump had with the team dealing with the war in Afghanistan. This war, I think, now has become the longest, one of the longest wars in American history. And no end is in sight. And so Trump is trying to get his military people to put together a strategy that's going to put an end to it. And apparently the team is not really doing such a good job. U.S. President Donald Trump, unimpressed by the Afghanistan war options presented to him during a White House meeting with his full national security team Wednesday, suggested that they might have to go back to the drawing board to craft a strategy that does not mirror the failed ones employed by his predecessors, said an administration official. The last real war, I mean, I'm not talking about Grenada or Panama, but the last real war that America won has to be World War II, right? I mean, think about it: Korea, Vietnam. Korea ended in a stalemate. Vietnam, we lost. Even though we won every battle, we still lost the war. And then, Iraq. Yeah, okay, we lost the peace, which means you lost. And then Afghanistan, we're involved in Syria now. We're not able to win that. It seems to me that after World War II, after the United States ended World War II by dropping 2 atomic bombs, we've been unwilling to do what's necessary to win the war. And there's been this sort of horror, I guess, at the atomic bombs, or not just the atomic bombs, but the bombing of civilians, like happened in Dresden in Germany, where the U.S. and other allies bombed civilians and caused a great many deaths among civilians, and also Tokyo. Tokyo was firebombed, and because most of the houses were built of wood back then, it caused many deaths. Actually, more people died in the firebombing of Tokyo than died in Hiroshima or Nagasaki nuclear attacks. And people recently have been asking me about the morality of that. But you know what? Number one, war is hell, and Father said that there's nothing that God hates more than war. So, yeah, you want to avoid war at all costs. And if war represents a failure of diplomacy, then the people who are doing the diplomacy need to do their job to avoid war. But if, after all is said and done, you come to a war, you got to do what's necessary to win. Because there's nothing worse than a war that you go into it without really a commitment to win. I think what President Trump is saying to his military people is, listen, come up with a strategy to win this thing. Let's end this thing. And let's get out. I think the U.S. should be involved now in as few wars as possible. But if you're going to get involved in a war, go into it with the idea that you're going to win it and do what's necessary to win it. Let's see what this article says. The meeting came as the Pentagon briefed lawmakers about plans to increase a U.S. military footprint in the country, meaning Afghanistan. Contrary to mainstream media claims that the president has taken a completely hands-off approach to the 16-year-old conflict in Afghanistan, Trump presided over Wednesday's meeting primarily aimed at discussing the U.S. war effort in Afghanistan. A Trump administration official familiar with the deliberations told Breitbart News on condition of anonymity. President Trump indicated that he is not satisfied with the strategy as it currently stands. The Pentagon and White House National Security Council declined to provide specifics about the developing plan. President Trump demanded that his team go back to square one if necessary and create a realistic plan that ensures Afghanistan is ultimately able to stand on its own as a country, said the administration official, noting that the meeting served as a sort of wake-up call for those involved in developing the strategy. Ultimately able to stand on its own as a country, that sounds like country building, nation building to me, and I'm not sure that's where we need to be involved in. In fact, let's ask, why are we now in Afghanistan? Why are we now in Afghanistan? Why are we in Afghanistan today? I'm not sure I know the answer to that. What would be the effect on the U.S. National interests if U.S. Packed up and left Afghanistan today? I'm not sure I know the answer to that. In fact, I'm sure I don't know the answer to that, actually. It appears that besides the Pentagon, the NSC has at least some authority in setting the strategy. Asked about the meeting, the Pentagon did not confirm or deny that the president asked officials to go back to the drawing board. We're not going to discuss White House meetings or directions, and of course, yeah. The NSC did not respond. Defense Secretary James Mattis told reporters last Friday a decision on the new plan will be unveiled around mid-July or somewhere around there. We are driven by the maturity of the discussion and where we're at. We're not going to meet some timeline if we are not ready, but we are pretty close. Trump has granted the Pentagon the authority to decide how many additional troops to deploy to the war-ravaged country. Maybe they need to tell us why we're there, maybe, or at least to remind us why we are there. Citing unnamed U.S. officials, CNN reports that as it currently stands, the strategy encompasses a way ahead in Afghanistan, including the possibility of sending more troops, but also a look at new ideas for dealing with Pakistan, which the U.S. believes is supporting or turning a blind eye to a number of terror groups operating inside the country. The president made it clear he is not interested in any approach that resembles the strategies used by his predecessors and will not accept anything less than a dramatic overhaul, the official told Breitbart News, directly dealing with Pakistan's support for terrorists fighting the U.S. and its allies in Afghanistan would make a significant departure from what America has done in the past. Most of the 2,255 U.S. military fatalities and 20,245 injury incidents have taken place in provinces that border Pakistan. The Pentagon spokesman defined what victory in Afghanistan means for Trump administration, saying it ultimately involves a settlement with the Taliban and terrorists laying down their arms. The U.S. strategy, here Stump, this guy, Pentagon spokesman, I guess, is going to give about 2 paragraphs to us now. The U.S. strategy in Afghanistan remains centered on working with NATO allies, operational partners, and the international community to defeat the remnants of core al-Qaeda and to defeat other violent extremist organizations and terrorist groups such as ISIS-K, to ensure that Afghanistan does not again become a safe haven for groups to plan and execute attacks against the United States, U.S. persons overseas, or allies and partners, and continuing efforts to provide financial and advisory support to the Afghan government and to enable a well-trained, equipped, and sustainable Afghan national defense and security force that provides security in Afghanistan. The U.S. and Afghan governments agree that the best way to ensure lasting peace and security in Afghanistan is through reconciliation and a political settlement with the Taliban. The United States supports an Afghan-led, Afghan-owned reconciliation process and supports any process that includes violent extremist groups laying down their arms. Okay, so that, I guess, is intended to be the answer to the question of why we are in Afghanistan. But this mission statement sounds to me like a very, very long-term commitment. And I would think that you could take a step back and say, wait a second, if this is our goal, if fighting terrorist groups is our goal, is being in Afghanistan the best way to do that? We could talk about that. I don't think that discussion though is going on. I think that is an assumption that needs to be challenged. So the Pentagon says, okay, we're in Afghanistan to fight terrorist groups, so that they don't plan and execute attacks against the United States, U.S. persons overseas, or allies or partners. All right, so that's their rationale for being in Afghanistan. But if that's your goal, if your goal is to protect the United States, protect U.S. persons overseas, protecting U.S. persons overseas, I mean, when I lived in Korea, Japan, I never expected the Marines to protect me. I don't know how much the U.S. is obliged, the U.S. government is obliged to protect U.S. persons overseas. But anyway, protecting Americans in America, obviously, that's obviously the job of the president and the job of the government, which needs to be done. So okay, so you want to protect the United States, its territory. Allies and partners, come on, they can stand on their own. Continuing efforts to provide financial and advisory support. See, continuing efforts, that means decades, all right? Continuing efforts to provide financial advisory support to the Afghan government and to enable a well-trained, equipped, and sustainable Afghan National Defense and Security Force. That is a decades commitment. I would question that. I would question that very much. Is this really the way is this really the best strategy for protecting the United States, being in Afghanistan, losing how many lives so far? 2,000 U.S. military fatalities, 2,255, and 20,000 injuries in Afghanistan, mostly in the provinces that border Pakistan. I'm not convinced that we need to be in Afghanistan, or I'm not convinced that that's the best way to protect the United States. Citing unnamed U.S. officials, the Washington Post reports that the current U.S.-Afghan war is framed around a 4-year plan to degrade the Taliban that is unlikely to yield significant results until its later stages. In recently issued reports, the U.S. State Department and the Pentagon have accused Pakistan of willingly serving as a safe haven for the Taliban and its affiliates, including the deadly Haqqani network. The Taliban affirmed its relationship with Al-Qaeda in December 2016. I tell you, it's a swamp. The more I read about this, the more I think we really don't want to be there. Really don't want to be there at all. Let's see what else the President has just put out another tweet. This morning I will be going to the commissioning ceremony for the largest aircraft carrier in the world, the Gerald R. Ford, Norfolk, Virginia. Well, have a good trip down to Norfolk, Mr. President. But this thing about Afghanistan, I hope you take another look at it, because don't just ask the Pentagon to show you a strategy for victory in Afghanistan. What is the exit strategy? What is the exit strategy? It sounds to me like we're making a commitment to prop up this government for decades and decades to come, and that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. We need to know when we can get out. But if Pakistan is supporting these terrorist groups, what are we going to do? Go into Pakistan as well? Deeper and deeper and deeper? No, I think we need to plan a quick exit out of Afghanistan. We need to plan a quick exit out of there, and let the Afghan people deal with their own problems in whatever way that they choose to do so. All right, let's take a break. We'll take another 5-minute break now, as we're at the 7 o'clock hour, and after that we'll be back with more news from a Choni Group perspective.
Kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 22nd, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheonryukguk, Hyungjin Moon. The president tweeted a few minutes ago that he's going down to Norfolk, Virginia this morning to participate in the commissioning of the newest aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy, the Gerald R. Ford. And so I wanted to look at that ship and see what it's all about. And Fox News has an article titled USS Gerald R. Ford Inside the World's Most Advanced Aircraft Carrier. Says that the U.S. Navy's new aircraft carrier is the most advanced in the world, carrying more aircraft and weapons than ever before. The USS Gerald R. Ford is $13 billion futuristic ship, complete with a gigantic flight deck and a new electromagnetic system to launch aircraft. The state-of-the-art tech and operational systems mean aircraft will be able to take off faster to get to the fight quicker. At 1,100 feet, the new Ford carrier is about the size of 3 football fields, built by Huntington. This is the first new design in about 40 years. The Navy has ordered 3 of these Ford-class carriers, combined price tag approximately $42 billion, and this is the first. On Saturday, July 22, that's today, the Navy will commission the Gerald R. Ford with fitting pomp and circumstance at the Naval Station Norfolk. And apparently the President's going to be there as well, according to his Twitter. This first CVN-78 is named after the former U.S. President Gerald R. Ford to pay tribute to his lifetime of service to the nation in the Navy and the U.S. government, etc., etc. So what advances does this new carrier offer? For starters, the ship is so advanced, folks describe it as being able to sell itself. That's a red flag. Cars that can drive themselves, airplanes that can fly themselves, and now we have an aircraft carrier that can sail itself. That's yeah. Oh boy, we're in trouble. The traditional throttle system used to power and steer the U.S. Navy's older carrier classes has been replaced by a thoroughly modern touchscreen navigation display. The Ford class is designed with the sailor in mind. The design sounds like a real estate listing, doesn't it? The design incorporates features to improve quality of life for sailors and to make maintenance easier. There was also a lot of consideration put into how to improve survivability against a wide range of current and anticipated future threats, and that helps keep sailors safer. And I hope they're watching out on their starboard to make sure they're not going to be rammed by some container ship. All right, I mean, it's nice to have the most advanced aircraft carrier in the world, but if the sailors are asleep on the watch, it's not going to do any good. In fact, the advances with this latest aircraft carrier mean things are more automated. The Ford has a crew of 2,600 sailors, so that means 600 less sailors. All right, how many people have a problem with that? That means 600 less sailors are needed than the Nimitz class. If you don't have a problem with that sentence, go back to 6th grade. What happened to the editors in this Fox News? More powerful, faster weapon loading. Obviously, the editing is being done automatically as well. With the 2 new reactors, the Ford class has about 250% more electrical capacity than previous carriers. The ship will be able to load weapons and launch aircraft faster than ever. The aircraft carrier has state-of-the-art electromagnetic catapults and advanced arresting gear. The military will be able to launch about 33% more aircraft than they can from the older carriers. The more aircraft the military can launch, the more bombs they can put over a target area. The larger flight deck will also make it easier for the aircraft to maneuver. The captain sits in a tower, and on this carrier, the island's position has changed, giving the captain better visibility. So it's going to be deployed actually in 2020. Today is just the commissioning, and after the commissioning, the Ford will undergo more testing, and then the first deployment will be in 2020. The next 2 Ford-class ships will be the future USS John F. Kennedy and the future USS Enterprise, CVN-80. And today's ceremony can be viewed on the Navy Live blog. You know, in the United States, America, of course, the Navy has been degraded. The military as a whole has been degraded, and so President Trump is going to try to build that back up, which is a good thing. But the more fundamental issue of the U.S. military has been that the political leaders have not been willing to use the full capacity of the U.S. military in order to win wars. And so the United States today finds itself being held hostage by, do you remember the 1960s novel and movie, I think also, I think it starred Peter Sellers in the movie, The Mouse That Roared. For young people, I'll describe the scenarios, like the scene or the stories I can best remember it. So there was a fictional country in the Alps somewhere, a very small fictional country in the Alps, and it was poor and backward, and their military only had bows and arrows. They didn't have any guns, and so they're thinking, how can we advance our country? How can we develop our country's economy? And look around, they say, look, Germany, they lost the war, World War II, and America had stepped in and helped them develop, and they're very rich. So maybe this would be a good idea for us. So let's declare war on the United States. And then we'll lose the war, and they'll come in, and they'll develop our economy. And so they do that. They mail a declaration of war to Washington, and the declaration of war gets lost in the mail. And so they wait and wait and wait for the United States to invade them, and the U.S. doesn't come. And finally they decide, well, we can't wait any longer, and so somehow, I don't know how they crossed the Atlantic, but anyway, they invaded Washington. Anyway, as I say, the movie star Peter Sellers, it's a very funny situation. But today, we have a mouse that's roaring. The United States, with all of its state-of-the-art, thousands of nuclear weapons and the world's strongest military, being held hostage by North Korea. Come on. So having this kind of a most advanced, state-of-the-art, automatically sailing, big aircraft carrier 3 times the size of a football field isn't going to do any good unless your political leaders are willing to use it. And that is a fundamental problem in the United States ever since the end of World War II. The U.S. was not willing to do what it took to win the Korean War. It was not willing to do what it would have taken to win the Vietnam War. And basically, the only people we defeated were Grenada and Panama, as far as I can remember. It's just building up the military is important, but let's have the will that if we're going to go to war, let's not go to war unless we absolutely have to. War is the absolute last resort that we don't want to do. We don't want to do it. But if it comes down to war, let's go in there with the idea that we're going to win the war. Otherwise, we're not doing anybody any good. Might as well not. If you're not going to go in with the idea to win the war, don't do it in the first place. Just let the other guys do whatever they want. Communize the world. If you're not going to go in there to win the war. Anyway, but we don't want to fight wars, but sometimes they're necessary. In the rare occasions when they are necessary, we have the ability to win, so let's win. More headlines from Drudge. 7-year-old takes wheel after overdosing dad, falls unconscious. Sounds like a good kid. A lot of 7-year-olds would have just panicked and not been able to do anything, but apparently this young man, he does really deserve to be called a young man, was able to do what was necessary. So he did what was necessary. How come the American government can't do what's necessary? But anyway, this is an overdosing dad, overdosing Brooklyn man, 7-year-old daughter. I'm sorry, not a young man, a young lady, young woman. I'm sorry, a mistake there. Overdosing Brooklyn man's 7-year-old daughter takes the wheel after he falls unconscious. The seven-year-old daughter of a drug-addicted Brooklyn man climbed into his lap and steered their Lexus to safety after his opioid overdose while behind the wheel, police sources said Friday. Eric Roman, 37, remained hospitalized Friday one day after two astonished FDNY emergency medical technicians spotted his small child steering the car on Ocean Avenue toward the busy Belt Parkway during rush hour on Thursday. We turned with the car and saw this little girl behind the wheel, said EMT Arlene Garcia, a mother of three, ages 9, 10, and 11. I'm a mom, so I was freaking out. I started yelling at her to pull over and stop the car. The diminutive driver seemed small for her age, Garcia told the Daily News. There's no way her feet could reach the pedals. We were turning with her, telling her to pull over, waving our arms wildly at her, but she wasn't pulling over. As the child kept a snail's pace, the first responders came up with a plan. We said to ourselves, how do we stop her? So we pulled right in front of her with the ambulance, and that's how we stopped her, Garcia explained. The slow-moving Lexus smacked the truck's back bumper and came to a stop. Garcia and her partner, EMT Charles Zimring, found a disturbing scene in the luxury vehicle. When we asked her what happened, she said, my dad was sleeping, so I was going to finish driving him home, Garcia explained. There you go, yeah. She's just driving him home. Doesn't know what all the fuss is about. The quick-thinking kid told the medics that she was in the back seat when her doped-up dad passed out. So she unbuckled herself and took the wheel. She wasn't scared at all. She was so great, Garcia said. All she was worried about was getting grounded for driving without permission. Police sources said the first responders brought Roman back with a life-saving dose of the opioid antidote naloxone, I guess you pronounce that. He was taken to a Brooklyn hospital for treatment. A relative who answered the door at the Roman home Friday declined to comment on the bizarre case. I've got nothing to say, the man said before closing the door. Roman was due for arraignment in Brooklyn court Friday on charges of reckless endangerment, acting in a manner injurious to a child, and driving while impaired by drugs. Neighbors said the 7-year-old is the older of Roman's two daughters and expressed surprise about his alleged drug use. He seems very family-oriented. He's a very nice guy, said Brian Zeng, 39. He said Roman was complaining of tennis elbow and his arm was in a sling last month. Probably he hurts very much, Zeng said. EMTs Garcia and Zimring were heralded for their efforts by their peers. Our members of situational awareness training works, and this is a perfect example. They place themselves at risk to prevent others from getting injured, said EMS Local 2507 President Oren Barzilay. So this stems from the ongoing opioid epidemic that is currently sweeping America. Opioids, of course, being the very strong painkillers, and it doesn't say what type of opioid was being used here, but some of them are many times more potent and more addictive than heroin, for example, and is really causing tremendous amount of death, overdose and death in every part of American society. This was in Brooklyn, but also in Pennsylvania, in rural parts of Pennsylvania, in many areas around the country. And the neighbor is saying that probably he had a tennis elbow, so maybe that was why he was taking these painkillers. So I'm sorry, that was a 7-year-old young woman who saved the day there. She was just trying to drive her dad home. She was going to finish driving him home because he fell asleep, and she couldn't understand what all the fuss was about. A man attempts 3 bank robberies in 30 minutes. OJ's parole hearing ratings dud with 13.5 million viewers. Yeah, I think we're kind of over OJ. In case anybody in the media world is wondering, I think we're kind of over him. You don't need to really be following him around and filming him for us. I think we're done with that. Great again, mining, construction, manufacturing, boom. Food stamps, the lowest in 7 years. The use of food stamps is the lowest in 7 years. How about that? Let's see what that's about. Participation in the food stamp program took a dive to the lowest level it has been in 7 years, according to new data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. USDA statistics on Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program participation showed that 42,609,852 people in the U.S. took part in the food stamp program in fiscal year 2017, the lowest level it has been since 2010, when 40,302,000 people enrolled in the program. Food stamp usage has been on a steady decline after 2013, when enrollment in the program swelled to 47.6 million, the highest amount it has ever been since the program's inception. The increase in number of people receiving food stamps during the period can be attributed to the Obama administration's efforts to allow those higher incomes to receive benefits. The increase was attributed to the Obama administration's efforts to allow those with higher incomes to receive benefits. Enrollment in benefits increased by 70% from the year former President Obama took office in 2008 to 2013. Starting in 2014, the number of people on food stamps started to decline slowly. The decline in enrollment began as a combination of the Obama administration's slight cuts to the food stamp program in 2014 Farm Bill and state efforts to curb prolonged food stamp dependency. Obama signed an $8.7 billion food stamp cut into law as a way to placate House Republicans in early 2014 after they pushed for deeper cuts to the program throughout 2013. Individual states such as Maine also began the process of implementing or reinstating work requirements to participate in the food stamp program that many states delayed putting in place because of the recession. The cuts to the program, along with states' efforts to curb food stamp enrollment, caused a domino effect. In 2014, 46.6 million Americans received food stamps, 45.8 million in 2015, and 44.2 million in 2016. Although Maine led the way in implementing work requirements for able-bodied adults without dependents who wish to receive food stamps, a lot of other states did not catch on until 16 and 17. Georgia made headlines when thousands dropped off the state's food stamp rolls after the state gradually rolled out food stamp work requirements starting in 2016. Other states, such as Alabama, soon followed, and more states are starting to find ways to decrease food stamp enrollment. So this is a government welfare program, and it's good that fewer people are dependent on it. I'd like to point out again that in the Chattanooga Constitution, the federal government would not be able to do this. And in fact, the vision in the Chattanooga is that this type of welfare be done through private nonprofit organizations, through private charities, or by individual. Within families, and strengthening the family is going to cure a lot of problems in society. People who need economic help should be able to rely on their network of relatives, of the extended family network. And I think that's the best way to do it, because then there's more effort to try to help that person get back on his or her feet, so that he can get a job and start to be able to get to an economic level where he or she can take care of themselves and their family. And I suspect that what I would like to know is that with this decline in food stamp participation, is anybody in the federal government losing their job? Maybe some jobs are being phased out because there's less money going out in food stamps. Because bureaucrats have a vested interest in keeping people poor to a certain extent so that they can keep their jobs. I think as a first step, this kind of thing, just turn all the food stamp program over to some, a large number of private organizations, and let them handle it. And over time, you can see which organizations do a better job of doing that, and so that that will be a first step, of course. And then future step, then just the federal government just takes that out of its budget, and so that the private organizations rely on contributions from private individuals, and those individuals will, of course, analyze the charities and see which one is spending their money with the greatest efficiency. Already we have internet sites such as GuideStar.org that aggregate information about nonprofit organizations in the United States. So you can go there and you can look up various nonprofit organizations, GuideStar.org, and they will give you the financial statements and so forth of various organizations. They say they have information from all nonprofit organizations in America, except for religious organizations, except for churches. You will not find our Sanctuary Church there, for example, or because we are not required to submit that kind of information to the government. But eventually, all this kind of charity work has to be privatized, and so that it can be spent more efficiently, and so that it can be spent in a way that encourages people to get back on track and to contribute to the prosperity of the nation. 50 years of war against poverty, and the poverty rate has not significantly changed. It goes up and down, but it has not really changed significantly, despite all the money that the government is putting in. Yes, Jesus said we should take care of our brother. Did not say that we should give all our money to Caesar so that Caesar could take care of our brother. We don't want to outsource charity to the government. We want to do it ourselves, and that's the best way. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back in a minute or so with more news from a Choniguk perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 22nd, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Choniguk, Hyungjin Moon. And we're going through the headlines here on drudgereport.com. Hello, Dali. Salvador Dali's mustache still intact 28 years after dying. Wow, that's... Makes you wonder, what was it made of? Was it actually of human hair, or was it some kind of plastic that he stuck on there? Anyway, he's very famous for that mustache. Man on hook for child support for a kid that's not his. New Jersey's smoking age climbs to 21. Doctors use virtual reality to save conjoined twin sisters. Talk of removing Confederate monument starts war of words in Dallas. Horror, elderly nursing home patient raped after assailant climbs through window. Santa Barbara shark attacks. A great white tosses kayaker chews on boat. Worrying about being out of shape can shorten lifespan. Shall we resist the temptation to go into that one? Yeah, okay. 100 Vice laying off 2% of staff. 100 accept buyout packages from NYT death panels. So the New York Times is reducing its staff. The President Trump keeps referring to the New York Times as failing, and it is in fact reducing its staff. This is an article in its rival New York Post. 100 accept buyout packages from New York Times death panels. Death panels, I guess, being the panel that's deciding who's going to stay and who's not. The New York Times death panels have concluded their work. Media Inc. has learned, and as of 5 p.m. on the July 20 deadline, it appears 100 employees at the Gray Lady have accepted voluntary buyout packages and are leaving the building. Aside from the complete elimination of the title of copy editor, well, no wonder we're finding so many mistakes in articles these days, like that. What was it? The Gerald R. Ford requiring 600 less sailors. No wonder we don't have any more copy editors. The New York Times offered buyouts to a limited number of reporters, photographers, and design people, according to Grant Glickson, president of the News Guild of New York, who was still tallying the final numbers at press time on Thursday. There is no word on whether the number will satisfy Times management or whether involuntary layoffs will follow. The Times declined to comment on the process. How voluntary the buyout packages really were is subject to some debate as well. There were an estimated 110 copy editors and backfield editors who were told in May by executive editor Dan Backett and managing editor Joe Kahn that their old jobs were being eliminated. But at the same time, the Times said it was creating a new brand of editor to oversee content in digital, print, and video formats. The new format would handle content across all platforms. Facing job eliminations, copy editors were told they could apply for the new positions, but with no guarantees of landing one of the 60 new jobs up for grabs. Reporters had staged a mini walkout in late June. Mini walkout meaning 20 minutes, all right? So it wasn't a mini walkout, it was a coffee break. Exiting out a side entrance on the south side of the building and walking around the front of the 8th Avenue Tower and back in a side entrance on the north side. The reporters carried signs indicating their support for the copy editors. Well, I don't mind New York Times losing staff because New York Times, New York Times in the 20s supported Soviet communism. They sent reporters over there that were reporting back that this was a great thing. And I think also they wrote favorable articles about Hitler. They've really done a lot of damage over the years to the United States. But the loss of copy editors is surely not a good thing. The loss of copy editors. So we're going to have fewer copy editors, not less copy editors, but fewer copy editors. Reporter accuses white woman of racism on city sidewalks. Apparently they didn't step out of his way. They want to save environment from invasive species. Eat them. Good idea. Mexico City spike in crime, violence sparks fear of cartel warfare. Millions heed anti-Maduro shutdown in Venezuela. Okay, well, that's not the article that I thought I was clicking on. But anyway, let's look at this one. It's also good to find out what's going on in Venezuela. Many Venezuelan streets were barricaded and deserted on Thursday for a strike called by foes of President Nicolas Maduro to demand elections and the scrapping of plans for a new Congress they fear would consolidate dictatorship in the OPEC country. Yes, let's remember that Venezuela is an oil-producing nation. In fact, it has the highest reserves of oil in the world, and it's going down the tubes because it has a socialist government. From the Andes to the Amazon, millions joined the 24-hour shutdown, staying at home, closing businesses, or manning roadblocks in a civil disobedience campaign the opposition hopes will end nearly 2 decades of socialist rule. 2 young men died in the unrest, authorities said. We must do our best to rid ourselves of this tyrant, said Miguel Lopez, 17, holding a homemade shield emblazoned with "No to Dictatorship" at a barrier on a Caracas street devoid of traffic. Many private transportation groups heeded the strike call, while students, neighbors, and activists hauled rubbish and furniture into the streets to erect makeshift barriers. The opposition said 85% of the country joined the strike. In some places, however, such as the poor Catia and January 23rd neighborhoods of Caracas, streets and shops were still buzzing, while motorbike taxis replaced buses. I have to work to subsist, but if I could, I would strike, said clothes seller Victor Sanabria, 49, in the southern town of San Felix. We're tired of this government. In a speech, Maduro vowed some of the strike leaders would be jailed, and insisted the action was minimal, with the 700 leading food businesses, for example, still working. He said opposition supporters attacked the headquarters of state TV and burned a kiosk of the government postal service, but were repelled by workers and soldiers. I've ordered the capture of all the fascist terrorists, he said, singling out a Caracas district mayor, Carlos Ocariz, for blame. In clashes elsewhere, security forces fired tear gas at protesters manning barricades. Youth shot fireworks at them from homemade mortars. Roni Tahera, 24, and Andres Uzcategui, 23, died after being shot during protests, the state prosecutor's office said. More than 170 people were arrested by late afternoon, the local rights group said. Violence during 4 months of anti-government unrest has taken around 100 lives, injured thousands, left hundreds in jail, and further damaged an economy in its 4th year of a debilitating decline. Clashes have occurred daily since the opposition Democratic Unity Coalition and a self-styled youth-led resistance movement took to the streets in April. In the latest fatality, a man confronting protesters was burned to death this week in the northern coastal town of La Heria, media and authorities said. Leaders of Venezuela's 2.8 million public employees said state businesses and ministries remained open on Thursday. I'm on strike in my heart, because if we don't turn up, they will fire us, said a 51-year-old engineer heading for work at a state steel plant, Sidor, in southern Bolivar state. Oil company PDVSA, which brings in 95% of Venezuela's export revenue, was not affected. In an internal memo seen by Reuters, PDVSA ordered all workers to strictly comply with working hours and stressed that failure to show up would lead to sanctions. The Constituent Assembly is going ahead. PDVSA President Eulogio Del Pino said on state TV, referring to Maduro's plan to create a super legislature in a July 30th vote to replace the current opposition-controlled National Assembly. As the PDVSA president spoke, he was surrounded by red-shirted oil workers and Monagas state chanting, "They will not return," in reference to opposition aspirations to take power. Some Venezuelans grumbled that Thursday's strike would cost them money at a time of extreme hardship. "How can I eat if I don't work?" said Jose Ramon, 50, chopping bananas and melons at his stall in a market in Catia. By early evening, the strike seemed far more successful for the opposition than a similar action last year, which had a lukewarm response after Maduro vowed to seize closed businesses. The streets are desolate, including close to the dictator, said opposition leader Freddy Guevara, tweeting pictures of empty avenues, including near the Miraflores presidential palace. "We will fill and empty the streets when we choose in protest." Venezuela's opposition now has majority support and said it drew 7.5 million people over the weekend for a symbolic referendum against the proposed assembly, which 98% of voters rejected. Maduro also faces widespread foreign pressure to abort the assembly, which could rewrite the constitution and supersede other institutions. The opposition is boycotting the vote, whose rules seem designed to guarantee a government majority in the new Congress. U.S. President Donald Trump weighed in on the dispute this week, threatening economic sanctions if the July 30 vote goes ahead. Individual sanctions could be applied to Maduro allies such as Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino or Socialist Party number 2, Diosdado Cabello, U.S. officials have told Reuters. If they don't sanction me, I would feel bad, mocked Cabello at a rally of supporters on Thursday. As well as a presidential election, Venezuela's opposition is also demanding freedom for more than 400 jailed activists, autonomy for the legislature, and foreign humanitarian aid. So, President Trump wants to get involved in Venezuela. Okay, if they're going to sanction certain individuals, I say, what, freeze their assets, freeze the assets of those individuals in the years or something like that, maybe all right. But, sanctions don't have such a stellar record of success. Look at Cuba. U.S. was sanctioning, or I think still is sanctioning Cuba for how many years now? 55 years or something like that. And still around, Venezuela just needs to be allowed to take its own course. I'm really sorry for the people there that they're not able to, they don't like the government, but they're not able to resist because they have to go to work in order to subsist. They're hungry and they need to do what they need, do whatever they can in order to get food for themselves and their families. It's a very sad situation, but I really hope that the U.S. Stays out of this situation. It's a bad situation getting worse, and I think we can keep our distance from it and let the Venezuelan people solve it on their own, because the government is people of Venezuela have to take ownership over their own country and take ownership over their own government, and no one else can do it for them. Are we going to go in, just like we're doing in Afghanistan now, are we going to go into Venezuela and create some kind of a defense force there and prop up that defense force for years and years and years to come? We need to stay out of these kinds of situations. All right, we'll take a break now and come back in a minute or so for what I believe will be our final segment this morning. And we'll be going through, Donald Trump has another tweet after the break.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, July 22nd, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. And we're going through the headlines and also following the president's Twitter account. He always likes to tweet in the morning, I guess, as he's getting his getting out of bed, having breakfast, getting his juices flowing or something like that. He starts going through the news and starts commenting on articles. And he has, last few minutes, has had two tweets. While all agree the U.S. president has the complete power to pardon, why think of that when only crime so far is leaks against us, fake news? So he's referring to something there that I'm not aware of. Maybe he was watching, CNN. Was he watching CNN? Wow. Anyway, it's something I'm not aware of. But the second tweet, though, is more interesting to me. So many people are asking, why isn't the Attorney General or Special Counsel looking at the many Hillary Clinton or Comey crimes? 33,000 emails deleted. Yes. In fact, but Mr. President, you have only yourself to blame, right? I mean, you hired the guy. So if he's not doing what you think he ought to be doing, maybe you should have asked more questions during the interview process. Like, hey, what do you think of Hillary? So is that something going to be looking into or something like that? I don't know what the law allows, but if your Attorney General is not doing what you think is necessary, maybe. Oh my, he's really hot this morning. He's got another one coming in now. What about all of Clinton ties to Russia, including Podesta Company, uranium deal, Russia reset, big dollar speeches, etc.? That's right. Yeah, they should be looking into that, and I'm glad that the president is bringing this up. There's really the crimes of Hillary Clinton need to be investigated. One of the slogans during President Trump's campaign was "lock her up," and many of us took that really seriously. We thought that really the justice was going to be done there, where the government was going to be looking into Hillary Clinton's various misdeeds, and that's not happening. And so the president is expressing his frustration over that this morning. So many people are asking, why isn't the Attorney General or Special Counsel looking at the many Hillary Clinton or Comey crimes? 33,000 emails deleted. What about all the Clinton ties to Russia, including Podesta Company, uranium deal, Russia reset, big dollar speeches, etc.? Yeah, go, go, go. He's obviously having a good day this morning. Let's look at more headlines here on a Drudge. Royal Shakespeare Company art director, Shakespeare may have been gay. So what? Over half of female murder victims killed by ex-lovers. Give them guns. Mini gold rush descends on California. They're trying to pass a single-payer, healthcare system. So maybe a mini gold rush is just what they need. Helicopter slams into Los Angeles street. First pictures inside sex robot factory making human-like dolls. This really is a tragedy, because. I guess you can see it as pornography at a new level. That's how I see it. And so just like pornography ruins husband-wife relationships, this is going to be even more of that. Update, city tears down elderly man's $550 staircase, promises to build new one for $10,000. Isn't that great? City tears down elderly man's $550 staircase, promises to build a new one for $10,000. Yeah, that's the society we live in. If the government can't do it for much more money than it costs for a private individual to do it, then it just doesn't get done. Sanctuary City standoff looms as ICE vows agent surge. So ICE is now saying that, okay, if you don't want to contact us, if you catch somebody for whatever, breaking the law for whatever, and you find out that he's an illegal alien, or maybe don't even ask, but you're not going to contact us, and then we will counter that by putting more of our agents in the field so that people coming out of courthouses can be interviewed to see if they are legal or illegal. Hawaii adopts an emergency plan for North Korea missile attack. Chemical experts fear terrorists could release the Black Death in cities. That's a real threat, actually. That is a genuine threat, because maybe North Korea cannot miniaturize its nuclear weapons to where they can actually fit in the cone of a missile, But they could put in, biological or chemical warheads there. A death from above, a terrorist could weaponize deadly plague disease by releasing it as a cloud above cities, killing thousands, experts warn. Warning comes amid fears imploding ISIS have been developing chemical and biological weapons. Because these organizations have ties with countries like North Korea. I'm not saying that they necessarily do, but I know that North Korea and Iran have had close ties. And Iran and some of these radical organizations, military organizations, terrorist organizations have had close ties. So it's very easy to see how something developed in North Korea could wind up in terrorist hands. That's where North Korea gets some of its money. Black Death could once again wipe out millions if in Britain, this is a British paper, if terrorists sprayed an antibiotic-resistant form above a city, according to bioterrorism experts. The plague killed a third of Europe's population in the Middle Ages, but scientists and governments fear it could return. No reason why it couldn't. We can't rule it out. It comes after research papers were found hidden at Mosul University after the fall of ISIS, detailing experimentation using chemical weapons on human beings. No evidence has been found so far of an advanced biological weapons program. But with ISIS imploding in Iraq and Syria, it is feared the death cult could step up any clandestine development and wreak revenge on the West. World Health Organization researchers estimated releasing a 50-kilogram aerosol cloud of plague bacteria over a city the size of London and its surrounding areas could cause at least 300,000 to become infected, with 72,000 perishing from the nightmarish disease. Meanwhile, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the U.S. believe plague is a major concern, along with anthrax, smallpox, and viral fevers like Ebola and Marburg. The Business Insider report that in his profile on plague expert David Wagner, health writer Eric Budman writes, after all, the bacteria were being used as weapons long before anyone even knew to call them bacteria. Plague-infected corpses were catapulted over walls. Venetians plotted to distill deadly liquid from swollen lymph nodes. Japanese planes sprinkled a rainfall of infected fleas. If those with nefarious motives and technical expertise wanted to weaponize the bacteria today, they could. So there's one more way in which the humanity can destroy itself. So my reaction to reading this story is let's not live in urban areas. Let's not live in urban areas. Let's live in more decentralized areas. Hawaii and the chemical and the Bieber banned from China to purify nation. Yes, of course, that's what's wrong with China. Justin Bieber. Controversial Justin Bieber banned China order to so on. Bieber banned from China in order to purify the country. All right. Let's see, how pure is China going to become? Canadian pipsqueak. This is the Telegraph. Canadian pipsqueak Justin Bieber may have successfully turned around his reputation by staying out of the headlines and converting millions of cynical pop fans by releasing uncomfortably decent music. But his good behavior tour hasn't yet worked on the Chinese government, who have banned the star from performing in the country. When a Chinese Bieber fan contacted the Beijing Municipal Bureau of Culture to ask why her idol hasn't been seen in the country for several years, despite scheduling dates in nearby Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, and the Philippines, and other unpure nations, of the Asian leg of his latest world tour, they were met with a friendly, if firm, response. Justin Bieber is a gifted singer, but he is also a controversial young foreign singer, the Bureau told the fan in a statement. In order to maintain order in the Chinese market and purify the Chinese performance environment, it is not suitable to bring in badly behaved entertainers. You know, it's not just communist countries that do this. We hope that as Justin Bieber matures, he can continue to improve his own words and actions and truly become a singer beloved by the public. So I guess he needs to read up. He needs to get a copy of Mao's The Little Red Book or something, or what is it these days? Xi Jinping's whatever. Maybe subscribe to the People's Daily or something. Bieber's bad behavior in the U.S., which included an arrest for drunk driving and a strange incident in which he urinated in a janitor's bucket and yelled "F Bill Clinton" at a portrait of the former president, didn't result in much diplomatic intervention, but his offensive behavior during his last Chinese tour created national outrage in the country. Along with being carried up the Great Wall of China by his bodyguards, an image of which resulted in a bombardment of international mockery, Bieber was also filmed skateboarding through the streets of Beijing while being pursued by his entourage. Bieber joins fellow music acts including Oasis and Lady Gaga in being banned from touring in the country for being unsuitable. Gaga has in fact been banned twice from the nation. Her music was placed on a government blacklist in 2011 for its vulgar lyrics before the ban was lifted in 2014. Unfortunately, her ban was reinstated less than 2 years later, reportedly after she controversially met with the Dalai Lama. Of course, our own second king of Cheongguk has been banned from China. I don't know if that's still in effect, but well, I'll let him tell the story, but he had an experience at a Chinese airport, which showed beyond any doubt that he was in fact banned, and probably also because he met the Dalai Lama. And mostly, most of the times when people meet the Dalai Lama, the punishment is that you get banned from China. See, we have about a minute left, but see here in the Breitbart News, Spicer, Trump didn't want me out, and I don't feel I was pushed out. Of course, he's being replaced as a White House spokesman by Ms. Huckabee. Trump team looks to fight against Mueller's overreach and Russia probe. Lindsey Graham, vote me down if you oppose amnesty and outsourcing. AP forced to interview Milo as dangerous tops bestseller list. Twitter boasts of troll crackdown ahead of earnings report. There are a lot of fake accounts on Twitter. The number of fans is not really an accurate thing. Nearly half of liberals feel disdain for Trump supporters. Don't worry, folks, the feeling is mutual. DOJ fails to respond to criminal referrals into Planned Parenthood. Delingpole Bill Nye, the old people must die to save the planet guy. Celebs mock Sean Spicer after resignation. Sessions stays on message. Buchanan Trump, his own communications director. Scaramucci smooth in debut. Mooch once said it's counterproductive to fight globalization. No, Maxine Waters says she won't run for president. Oh, come on, Maxine, please. Ben Stein, Mueller out to get Trump, wants to kill career. Palestinian terrorists murders Israeli father, son, daughter inside their home. Pentagon withholds Pakistan military funding over tolerating Taliban. Rabbi Shmuley, Roger Waters' hatred eclipses his talent. Leo, ditching private jet for commercial flight to climate change fundraiser. Just for that one trip, of course. All right, thanks for joining us this morning. We're at the end of our broadcast now, and I hope you have a good weekend. Godspeed, God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.